Hello. Hello. Okay. Got a lot to get over. Pardon me. That makes great podcasting. We have a lot to get over. A lot to go over. Not get over. I keep saying get over for some reason. These are wrestling. We have a lot to go over today. Because normally I would just look at certain areas of Antarctica that are well known. Today is doing some a little more experimental, as in just looking at the continent as a whole and all the imaging that we have available. We have Lima, we have Rima, we have Sentinel imaging, Sentinel 1 and 2. But it's a lot of resources available for a very difficult to satellite photograph continent that's on the bottom of the axis. Now what we're looking at here, I've looked in previous years and months, and I've seen times where it looks the sea extent has decreased substantially, only to get quite a rise later on. But I only hope that this is temporary, because the rapid decline of sea ice I am seeing here is pretty spectacular. You think of the largest fresh body of fresh water on the planet. It holds a lot of resources that are very valuable that we have non-exploit agreements with other countries, scientific research purposes only. Now we have a shrinking Antarctica, the extent of the sea ice getting weaker and thinner and breaking apart more frequently. We're not talking about the ice shelves, we're not talking about the big things that we see collapse into the sea. We're talking about the thin layers, that membrane, bobs and weaves up and down, breathes, its lungs, it's what it does. Oxygen still in this water. And you have a monstrous amount of ice as big as some countries. I would just say Argentina for one. Say the size of Argentina worth of ice gone. I'm not talking about death. I'm not talking about the continental ice shelves breaking apart. We're talking about when you take a vessel from Argentina straight to Antarctica, you're going to run into a lot of ice, the icebreakers. But that starts receding and the water starts warming, and the warmest water starts to win. That's when you start seeing all the water coming over the line of Antarctic to start receding, start pulling ice back. And we just want to look at a few examples if we can find any. Again, just looking at these fresh. Anytime I want to look at a resource, I usually go live. Pretty dramatic, the changes going from December 2023, because let's go to 2023 December. See how full and rich this looks. It looks like you imagine Antarctica to look. But within a matter of weeks, it starts to recede. The ice extent begins to decline. And we're finding ourselves where we are now today. While the North Pole is looking strong, ice, South Pole has been weak for a second month straight. Now, now again, this doesn't mean that the continent melted down. What we're looking at is the sea ice extent reaches beyond the continental ice shelves. But all of that, we don't know how thick all this water, all the sea ice goes. From what I gather, it changes a lot. But with more climate change, a lot more warmer weather that is bombing areas of Antarctica with unseasonable or just any season out of season warmth. And then it moves around, moves away. But that heat still acts on the snow, on the ice, on the water, fresh water that melts on top of the continent, flows somewhere, and it makes these channels, and those channels eventually make very long slides for water. And as water warms up, it's going to warm up all that, these ice shelves. They eventually work down into the water. Now this is Lima. There is quite a few major icebergs by McMurdo Station. I have no way of knowing when these images were taken here. I don't like using this unless I can verify it using Sentinel Energy. And this is Rima. Another way to access the land data information of topography is topology. And it has the tallest peaks on the planet, Antarctica. And being Mount Erebus, a very tall volcano. It's active. Spits out gold. Now we can see here not the right one. Tropics. We are at least 1.2 C. Up to 1.5 is a given. There's no slowing down. There were slowing down. I think no. It's gonna be your side is doing it now. No, your side is doing it now. It doesn't matter. It all becomes grade school politics. Well, like the amount of pollution, warming, not even just the amount of pollution either. It's the less amount of forests, less amount of wetlands and bogs and swamps to hold water permanently instead of having it roaming around in the atmosphere, boiling in the sun, broiling, I think. It's something that we're seeing here in the tropics. Has never been before so staggeringly over the limit. I'm sorry, 1.5 C is the limit. That's the agreed on limit. We get to 1.4 C. Oh, okay. I want to change anything because we got another year to 1.5 C. This is insanity. We're seeing it now. Like, people probably know that, but they're going to prepare for survival or prepare for the worst, not knowing what the worst could possibly be because they've rejected all science accordingly. It is dangerous. Be so dumb. We have plenty of ice to look at when it comes to Antarctica. We have ice that looks like it was hit by a hammer. A lot of cloud coverage. Again, we're looking at facing fresh with a fresh pair of eyes. A lot changes in a couple of days or a few days. We're not seeing anything stands out. Let's go to time lapse. Be a lot of cloud coverage, but there's going to be some breaks usually. We can see so much of it today. These most recent scans than I've been able to see before. A lot of ice floating around, tiny bits of ice, it spirals and breaks apart and tears itself apart. This looks like so much ice has been smashed, done away with. Really see the differences here. Right along here. Area right here. Right here. Other areas are too much scared by cloud coverage. Now we've looked at Antarctica now for months. Pretty much, I believe, since July of 2023, hottest month on record. Just started noticing the amount of melt that was happening. Was very, very, very adamant about trying to get that message out because we don't get an opportunity to do it right. When things go wrong, everything goes wrong. That's it. Now we're just waiting, looking for evidence of greater calamities to come forward because everyone is too afraid of abandoning the way of life that they know today. If generations after us never had a chance, something I don't think the generation before me were asking themselves. We're stuck really just with our hands up as pretty much in limbo. The great deal amount of ice moving around. like looking around and take a mental image inventory. Probably look at a time lapse. I'll remember what it looked like. It looks fresh. Here. The other thing too is that I would normally look for is these indents, indentations, straight striation indentations. See if any recent changes. Oh, it does not look like there's been a recent change. That's why we look at this. It's a series of islands connected with frozen water. You have areas like this that have untold amounts of life around it, on top of it. Yeah, I remember seeing these features. Ema. The time lapse these peaks. Sorry, I was muted for a moment. See how they're not dropped out. See, they're held up. They're a bunch of little tiny blocks of ice frozen together. They move up and down. So these depressions that form, that makes the object that will be free. A lot of ice, a lot of breaking up, ton of breaking up. See this hawking happening all over the place. The little line separation, these indentations of material that's removed from underneath them. You start seeing these depressions that eventually turn into channels that turn into like a river system, except it's a frozen river and it moves very slowly. This is wild. This is absolutely wild. What happened here? Looks like hundreds of millions of tiny icebergs just floating around. That's what it looks like when the cracks break off, because like we've chasm. Water flows through and takes it with it. Takes it all away. Becomes another country-sized iceberg. Okay, here is the volcano. Take a look at it. This is Mount Erebus. It's a very interesting volcano. Alarming ice conditions near it. Massive, massive piece of ice that broke off here. 20 kilometers, 29 kilometers. And you have southwest of the volcano, all this area that's heating up. You see the rocky outcrop. Very, very particular feature here. Mountain. And that's how we know. Done looking around Antarctica and this, in those features. Let's see. Now that we're back to where we started, so you're gonna time lapse of this and call it a night. Oh, hello. A23A. Oh, but I was missing it. Huge iceberg, 80 kilometers in length. I'm not smiling because of the iceberg. "80 kilometers. It looks like it has an armrest feature on it that might be pulling apart from the rest of it as it gets rotated around Finally. Did a 180. Now, I'm still certain this iceberg collided with the South Shetland Islands some time ago, generating a significant earthquake because of the rise of the sea floor at the bottom hitting it. And this thing stopped dead in its tracks right at that same moment. Not a coincidence. But this thing is starting to rotate around and dance around and starting to go into the sea now, where it can be a problem because it can get into waters that will eat it alive. And that amount of fresh water that's introduced into the sea is going to cause sea to pop. The seas are much lower seabed. That's a much more accessible seabed, but more difficult to get out of the sea than it is into the ocean. I think it is. It was. While it may be snowy and icy in some areas, a lot of precipitation that gets displaced and moved around, that gets caught in the atmosphere, which winds up in these atmospheric rivers. The atmospheric rivers drop months of rain down on top of a little area that probably normally would get that. You start displacing climate, or adding more moisture into the air, it gets heated up, that starts replacing cloud coverage. What is an important aspect of living is you want to be able to have a moderate amount of UV exposure. I don't mean like your skin, I mean just everything. You can't have 120-degree days, sun just completely beaming down on it the entire day. Not good. You don't want to displace, move water and moisture with heat, fire. That's what happens. It causes drought, it causes the sky to boil a little bit. Not literally, but just water heats up and falls back down as water or rain. When it cools, the air is not moving as much. But as soon as it heats up, that wind it's just full starts. You start getting these drops of rain that should be measured in the months, falling in a measure of hours or days. You see a lot in Australia, but you hear a lot of people. I lived here for 30 years. I've never seen rain like this before. Never seen flooding like this before. Yeah, hearing it a lot. This is iceberg A23A making its way out. This thing is unleashed. Now I know there is a agreement between countries not to exploit land and resources of Antarctica, but what happens if one of these giant icebergs floats out of Antarctica? Is it fair game? And just anyone grab this thing and start harvesting it like they are doing in Greenland? Well, that's a country's worth of water that they can probably tow back before it melts. You don't see people with ice tongs anymore. I tell you, I like that. This would be huge if this got into the South Atlantic. This got into South Shetland Islands. If it comes back, there's no guarantee where this iceberg is going to float. We just keep monitoring it to make sure it's where we think it might be. But the day that this thing disappears and we don't know where it is, like that's probably not possible. Probable. You have very seriously alarmingly large ice cube freshwater bobbing around, picking up speed, hitting its stride in the sea, heading towards a series of islands that are just littered with penguins. Penguins all over the place. Now, the other thing about this iceberg and other mammals in the area and birds is that the amount of time it would take for any of these animals that require to swim to go under or around it, even if there is any kind of area that is under it. If this thing is only a few feet from the bottom of the seafloor and just grinding around, we don't know. What we do know is that an iceberg of this magnitude, it would take hours to go around in a boat. A lot of birds and stuff like that that might nest on top of it, but it's really moving. So it just picks up speed again, going into the Saragossa Sea. Scotia Sea, Saragossa Sea is up in the Caribbean. Scotia Sea, yeah, that's the one. We have this heading that way. So it gets into warmer waters and it melts. It's no longer a giant ice cube, it's let it out. Let all the water out of the ice cube. Not good. But again. Okay, I think I'll call it here on this iceberg. Made its way around a couple of times. You see a lot of ice breaking up that's in millions of pieces. It looks like jackhammer was taken towards the ice sheet. As we can see in the climate reanalyzer that we were looking at earlier, it's a great decline of Antarctica's ice extent, where it can reach, where it stays frozen. Seeing it so battered, I guess you could say, is alarming. All the information is alarming. Everything points to alarm. So I'm raising an alarm. I see everything that I've seen since July points to a large line of sea ice up and around Antarctica, around the line of Antarctic. Keep eyes monitoring certain areas, especially with this iceberg floating around. It's of amazingly great interest, as definitely did hit the South Shetland Islands. I'm sure of that. Flying around and it's doing all these 90-degree turns. See how in the beginning this giant fractured area was facing east north, rotating 1.5 times already. Alright, that is roundup for Antarctica. If you could please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out immensely. Thank you for watching, and this message gets across to more people.